Hey friends, I I've been preparing, if you can call it that, for a presentation pretty soon. And I had a really interesting conversation today. My parents called just to say hi and kind of were giving me some encouraging words about this thing coming up. I'm presenting at a music teachers conference and I'm presenting on improvisation. It's something that I know a lot about. I'm pretty comfortable shooting from the hip on a presentation like this. The only thing that's mildly sort of puts me on the edge of my seat is that it's really a conference of music teaching professionals. And so my research background, at least as far as published papers and things like that, is pretty slim. I've learned what I do by doing it, by teaching it, by being someone who loves the process of learning and teaching, and essentially just allowing myself to try things out, to go directions, to see what'll happen. And I think there is some real fruit to that. There is some real value that comes from that is really non-academic. It sort of it comes from an angle, comes from a direction that it's not that it couldn't be incorporated into academia. In fact, sometimes I think about how I might bring what I do to a more academic context, how I might define it and document it, codify it. But I'm also I'd say I'm pretty confident, and I'm certainly very experienced with making it up in the moment with a student and letting the moment tell me what's called for, which of course, as far as improvisation goes, is sort of the name of the game. I mean, that's kind of what you're doing. Now, my presentation is going to actually sort of back up off of that notion of spontaneous generation and sort of talk about, because the thing is, before you can really improvise confidently, you have to have certain things you can do. You need things that you can do easily and almost like tread water. Before you get too creative, you need to be able to tread water. It's like staying afloat in the milieu, staying afloat in the piece, in the flow of time. This staying afloat metaphor is kind of nice. You need to stay afloat in the running river of time long enough to get your bearings and then say, okay, now what direction do I actually want to go? What do I really want to do here? So it's of course great to help people be more spontaneous and be more free and more generative and more trusting of their impulses. But the other big part of the equation, if you're teaching someone to improvise, is teaching them, here's a solid place to stand. You can do this and your feet will be on the ground and you can survive long enough to then build upon that. Because one of the things that overwhelms people when they learn to improvise is that too many things are unknown at the same time. Too many, they feel like they have to spontaneously generate too many elements at the same time, and that makes it hard. That makes it feel like it's something that we can't do, or that it's difficult to do, or it's difficult to do well, which it actually kind of is. Um, but there are all kinds of, it's almost like, and again, I say this all the time when I'm teaching students, it's almost like it's the non-musical stuff that's the most important. It's understanding what constitutes a cognitive task and knowing how many cognitive tasks you can manage at once. The answer is usually one, and maybe two, but usually one, and you want to take the other ones off the table. So anyway, it's really kind of non-musical learning that is the basis of the teaching. That's the basis of getting going in this musical form of expression, improvisation. So anyway, I'm over explaining the kind of content of my presentation. That's not really what I wanted to talk about. I got a call today, and I was just chatting about it with my folks, and I had already had this little inkling, but the conversation really helped refresh it and make it even more vivid. I'd had this feeling like I've got about 5 of these in me, and that's just off the top of my head. I feel like there are a bunch of these presentations that are actually kind of, I'm enthusiastic about them. I'm excited to do them. I don't particularly know why, but I am. I just know that it kind of tickles me to think about presenting certain ideas. Often it's music theory. This improv thing is kind of like a weird one out of the gate because it is going to be theoretical, and there's going to be plenty of music theory in it. A little bit of music theory, not plenty, a little bit of music theory in it. But I find myself drawn to music theory as a thing, and it's really fun that I'm working with my daughter now because I have a 5-year-old, and I'm seeing what a 5-year-old mind can do with music theory, and it's kind of mind-blowing. It's kind of an amazing thing, and I don't know if like my thing is teaching this stuff to people that age. Never has been my thing. It's really kind of only my thing because I have a child that age. But I am really interested in looking at how to present something that often people get to high school or college and they're like, oh my God, why is this is so hard, and it feels so, it feels difficult. And theory is often like the sort of, it weeds out the people who are serious about a music major and those who aren't, because a lot of times people will give up on the theory and they'll decide to do a music minor instead because they can't hack the theory. And it's such a shame because the theory's not that hard. It's a language. And if you suddenly, usually when you study music, by the time you're at college, you're going to a conservatory, you play your music, you play your instrument probably quite well. And the theory is relatively advanced. So that would be like going to college, but oftentimes there hasn't been a lot of preparation for that theory. So people get to college, and then they're like, oh my gosh, what is all this? And it would be kind of like going to college and going to like a 400 level course in Japanese if you didn't speak Japanese. Of course it would feel hard. You don't speak that language. If you'd been speaking that language since birth, you wouldn't find it that hard. Or not birth, but like age 5, 4. And you know, Shinichi Suzuki talks about he kind of had this big epiphany when he was starting to teach. He had this epiphany that all children can learn music because all children learn their native tongue. They will all learn to speak their native language excellently, fluently, and he made the connection between music and language. I feel like I have a similar sort of enthusiasm around the idea that music is a language. Music theory is like the written version of that language, and it's more than just the written version. It's the cognitive aspect of understanding that language. So you don't just play notes. You don't just play your instrument well. You understand what you're doing. You have a relationship to harmonic flow. You have a relationship to rhythmic flow. You have an understanding of melody, the meaning of melody, how melody moves, which is a combination of harmony and rhythm. So there's a kind of linguistic fascination that I have with music theory that I think is something I'd really love to present on more. And I kind of knew this already, but today's conversation really reminded me, like, oh right, I'm doing this one presentation, but I could do 2 or 3 of these in a heartbeat. I mean, like, pretty much right now, I could show up and do good 30-minute lecture on modes. I could do a good 30-minute lecture on diatonic, triadic playing, moving within a key, improvising within a key, composing within a key. I could easily do several units on jazz theory. I mean, I'd have to narrow it down. You know, there's a universe in there. But I could do a presentation on slash chords. I could do a presentation on melodic minor. There's just, and as I started to speak today, I got excited about those things. I was like, oh, right, I've got all this. And so as I prepare for a presentation that I'm feeling underprepared for it, and I don't have a ton of time to get prepared. I mean, I'm gonna have to prepare some, but I'm not gonna have time to like exhaustively prepare this thing. But I do have time to organize my thinking, put together a presentation that's clear and coherent. And I do have time to just be to let the enthusiasm I naturally have for the subject matter sink in, remind myself of that. That's what I'm really doing. I'm going to speak about something I love. So let's pretend there are no rules for what I have to do, and it's all about what I get to do. It's all about allowing this impulse in me to kind of express itself. See where that takes me on this presentation. So I was very grateful that my parents called and wanted to talk to me about this. And I was grateful for where it brought me and what kind of came to me in reflecting on that. So, and I'll keep you updated because I'm going to be there in a week and a half, and you'll see my hotel room probably. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great day. See you soon.